Well, good morning, everybody. Here we're reading through Exodus 16 to 18. And man, we can be hard on the Israelites. We look at it and we see their complaining and we see their failures. But if we were put in the same situation without the Holy Spirit and we're coming out of slavery, I'm not sure many of us would do any better. And we have to consider their mentality, what they were coming from. They were generations in slavery to the Egyptians. The Egyptians told them what to do. They did it, and then they received provision from the Egyptians for their work. So everything was provided for them. So if you're only looking at housing and food, they had it pretty good. But most people value freedom, and they did not have freedom, and that was hard on them. And we see in the desert that they didn't even know how to handle freedom. They didn't know what to do with freedom. So they were set free, but they were set free so that they could learn what it was to be dependent on Yahweh. Not in the sense of slavery, but in the sense of father. There's not too many um, children who would complain against their father because their father likes to provide for them. Their mother likes to provide for them. They're not going to complain when dad brings home the groceries. They're not going to complain when dad puts food on the table. They're not going to complain when mom brings home the paycheck. They're not going to complain because this allows them to have a wonderful life. And the Israelites will be given opportunity to decide whether they want to live that dependence on Yahweh, or whether they want to go it on their own and worship other gods. But in this moment, they're 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 struggling with this idea of freedom, and there's a lot of complaining, and they're finding it hard to get out of poverty mentality, because Yahweh gave them very specific instructions on when they could collect the food and when they weren't to collect the food. And right away, we see them trying to hoard it. They went and they tried to gather as much as they could, and they kept some aside for the next day. And it was just like, yeah, raw, terrible, it's spoiled. But this was the poverty mentality that they had to hoard things away because they didn't know whether they would have enough for the next day. And either we have that mentality ourselves, or we know people who have that mentality of always putting away. People don't want to live from paycheck to paycheck, and there's wisdom in that. But when it comes to Yahweh, it doesn't work that way, because we are supposed to have a dependence where every day we trust Him for our daily bread. Every day we trust Him for provision. Every day, and that's and what we're learning as the Israelites we're learning, is to let go of the idea that we have to take care of ourselves. Um, there's a partnership there, obviously. If God arranged for us to have work, then we have to go and work. And we're intended for work. We are created for work. We feel best when we're working. We don't feel all that great when we're not productive. But there is that sense that these things are provided by Him. He provides the strength that we need. He provides the wisdom and the skills that we need. He provides the opportunities that we need. These are all things that He's providing. And we have to lean on Him for that. And those of you who've gone through multiple jobs, you know that. And those of you who have turned your back on the Lord and got into trouble with provision, and so you know what it was like when you came running back to Him and He provided. And there's a level that we can provide for ourselves, but it will never be the quality, never be what He intends for us to have. He always plans for us better than we could ever plan for ourselves. And this is where the Israelites have to get, because they're going through this desert experience, and this generation isn't going to make it. We know that we've read this before. They're not going to make it because they were not able to break out of that poverty mentality. When they were presented with the promised land, they were stuck in that poverty mentality where they could not see that they could be a mighty nation that could overcome these other nations. They just couldn't see it, and they grew afraid. And that's what poverty mentality does. It limits us. If it put it, we don't want to take risks. We don't want to step out of what we're comfortable with, and so they're not going to make it. But a generation is raised up, that they learn to be dependent on the Lord. And when they come into the promised land, they fight giants, they take on nations, they drive out the ones that the Lord wanted them to drive out. So we have to check where we are. Are we those who press in our dependence? Are we those who trust and lean on the Lord? Or are we those who panic and are filled with fear and anxiety and complain and have that poverty mentality where we hoard away for tomorrow because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring? Yeah, where are we? Okay, you guys be blessed, be encouraged. Love you all, and we'll talk to you later.